welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's another It's Tadpole UFC Fight Night breakdown and verdict prediction video. I had a break last week, didn't catch the Chikadze Barboza event. I watched it delayed. I was too busy. It was a fantastic fight night. The tough finales were super entertaining. Ricky Tercios, very, very unique character. Some of my favourite bits of the main card there, Daniel Rodriguez showing up against Kevin Lee. What a fantastic performance. And then obviously Giga Chikadze putting away Edson Barboza like that is a monster scalp. So very, very impressive. As for my last video, it was 2 weeks ago now, it was the Kelvin Gastelum versus Cannonier card. Just a quick recap on that. On verdict, we got a silver badge, went 4-2 on main card predictions. Betting perspective, we went down 1.75 units. Of course, lost the multi. And then hit one single play with the Sergey Kakramanov money line, but lost the Kelvin Gastelum money line bet, and also had Mark Madsen to win via finish over Clay Guida, which he could not pull off. My best call of the night on that card would have been Sergey Kakramanov. I had to make that call off minimal footage, but I liked his style, and he took Trevin Jones out as a 3.02 times underdog on verdict, which was very handy for my badge aspirations. Worst call of the night, Chase Sherman, 1.24 times on verdict. He was a massive favourite, which was a disgusting price, and he just got outworked by Parker Porter, who proved to be the better boxer and the stronger guy. Chase Sherman should never have been that price, and I should not have taken it. So that's that. As for this week, verdict are being a little slack. They've still got the Ariane Lipski-Mandy Bohm fight on the main card there, which has been cancelled. So I'm just going to get this video out with the 5 remaining fights, with the likelihood that verdict will add another bout onto their slate, which I will release my picks for through my social medias outlets, which are all in the description. But yeah, this week, 5 fights to break down. We've got 3 single plays, one of which being a formula bet, plus the multi, as always, at over $25 to 1. So without further ado, let's pick it up at the bottom. We got Paddy, the baddie, Pimlet, versus Luigi Vendramini. Paddy Pimlet, 1.23 times on verdict, but $1.64 at the bookies. Vendramini, 5.26 times on verdict and $2.20 at the bookies. Now, Paddy Pimlet, he already has that superstar feel to him. He's arrogant, he talks a lot, and he has an exciting fight style. His record, 16-3. He's been fighting in Cage Warriors for essentially his whole career, and does have wins over good opponents with impressive records. I would expect that the UFC would want to nurture a guy like this into being a big money fighter for them, but it is an interesting stylistic matchup that they have thrown him into for his debut. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Paddy Pimlet is a grappler, an erratic submission artist, very, very good at rolling through positions and attacking submissions. He's very aggressive and always searching for something. Off his back, he's going to do the same. He throws up his legs. He loves the triangles, loves arm bars. And then when he does decide to spend time on top, his pressure and control is also very good. We just don't see him do it for very long because he's already moving on to the next spot and working for submissions. I would liken him to Brandon Royval on the mat with kind of his jiu-jitsu style. As for his striking, it's definitely his weakest point, but he is pretty fast, and he brings a kick-heavy attack. He's relatively rangy, and he likes to use his push kicks and side kicks as well as high roundhouses from range, but ultimately explode in and grapple. Vendramini, I think he is the better striker in this matchup. He's not fantastic by any means, but his boxing is better. He's definitely slower than Pimlet, but he has good pressure, good output, and a good gas tank to boot. He also, though, is primarily a grappler. He's a black belt in BJJ. As for his style on the ground, it's definitely less erratic than Pimlet. He has a more traditional approach, more of a wrestling base, and will Well, he prefers to gain control before transitioning, before setting up a submission where, Paddy seems to try and do it all at once. But I feel like that could work well for Luigi in this fight, especially as I think he's going to be the stronger guy. This fight's at lightweight. 2 fights ago, we saw Luigi at welterweight. Paddy Pimblett's typically a featherweight. There's going to be a significant size difference here. And although the speed goes to Paddy, the strength should definitely be in Vendramini's favour. In Vendramini's favour. Which is going to be a big factor in the grappling exchanges where I expect this fight to largely play out. I think Luigi's going to be able to control the positions more. And Paddy's going to be doing all sorts of crazy shit, which is worrisome, but it gets him into trouble more often than not. He always seems to be fighting his way out of submission attempts from his opponent due to his wild style and his unorthodox nature. And from what I've seen, his submission defense, it is sound. He does all the right technical things, but he still gets in bad positions very frequently, largely off of his own doing. And I honestly think that Vendramini is a skilled enough grappler to capitalise on that. So I'm going with an unpopular opinion, very unpopular opinion, and I'm taking Luigi Vendramini via a round 1 submission at 51.26 times on verdict, which is a crazy price. Paddy Pimblett, he has been submitted before. 4 of Luigi's 9 wins are via a tap. Pardon me. All 4 of those submission wins in the first round. He's a black belt. And to hang my hat on this play, I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to bank on Luigi Vendramini cinching up an anaconda choke. That front choke, it's going to be live on all of Paddy's wrestling entries. It's going to be live when he jumps up for a flying triangle or a flying armbar, as he does. And then if Vendramini does manage to get some top control, move to side position or side control, which is a position that he loves, the anaconda's going to be there again. Go for that gator roll. And when it happens, just tune in. Tell him the Tadpole told you. Next fight, Modestas Bukauskas versus Khalil Roundtree. Bukauskas 2.88 times and $1.64. Khalil Roundtree 1.53 times and $2.20. I said never again to Khalil Roundtree after he lost to Marcin Prachnio. Never again. But here we fucking are. Do I think that Bukauskas is worse than Prachnio? No, I do not. Prachnio is awful. But the formula wants me on Khalil, and I see the value. I do. He can be such a good fighter on his night, but he's kind of riddled with performance anxiety. He often shows no urgency, and he does have obvious durability problems. But here's the thing, Modestas, he also has durability issues. His defense, just like Khalil's, is poor, and he doesn't really have the highest volume. Roundtree, he has thunderous power, and when he kind of adopts that Muay Thai approach, he looks so swift and agile. The Eric Anders fight, Khalil looked like a world champion that night. He was so aggressive, so vicious with his kicks, and then just timing his boxing entries to perfection, sitting down on every shot. I think that on the whole, Modestas, he has better footwork. He is better at moving away and then moving in, but he's weak to the body, and Khalil, he targets that midsection frequently, and Bukauskas, he's reckless with his entries. He leaves his chin up high, he throws his shots real loose, and he gets countered clean. Khalil Roundtree is not going to push a pace. We know that he's going to stand in the middle and he's going to work from there. It's going to let his opponent do work too, but it makes him adept on those counter shots, which are open all night on a guy like Modestas. And I just don't see Khalil getting pushed back all fight long. Because Khalil, he's susceptible to being out volume, but he doesn't really take a back step. And I just think one of these guys is going to fall. And I'm backing my boy Khalil. I do love this guy. The formula wants it. I want it. Roundtree, round 1 knockout at 2.72 times. get vicious. Let Modestus have it. It's a good stylistic matchup here for him. As for something I didn't talk about, the ground game, Blachowicz, he has notched some subs in the past, but it would be out of the ordinary for him to implement a grappling game plan. It may be an element considering how poor Khalil's defensive wrestling can be, but I just want to see Khalil crack skulls, man. He has it in him. He went back to Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand after the Praknial loss. Realise that potential, man. Come back out with that good shit. One moment. Alright, Alex Morono versus David Zawada. Alex Morono 1.25 times on verdict, but $1.64 at the bookies. David Zawada 5 times on verdict and $2.20 at the bookies. Alex Morono should not be this short on verdict, but I am on him. Yeah, I really like him. I had him to win via knockout in the first round against Cowboy Cerrone, which was a great fucking call. Nice one, Tadpole. And I made that call because he hits so hard. He throws everything into his hands and he throws everything in combination. He has incredibly high volume, He can drop off in the third as a result, but Zawada has nowhere near the level of aggression that Alex does, and I don't see it being a massive factor here. As for David Zawada, I think he is the better technical striker. He throws straighter shots and he has good leg kicks. Morono, he doesn't really kick the legs at all. And Zawada, he can hang around for 3 rounds at his pace. But this fight's not going to be at his pace. He's going to be getting backed up all night. Morono is just all pressure. And, Zawada, he retreats in straight lines. His defensive footwork is not great from what I've seen. And I think Alex is going to be able to find him on the end of those combinations when he is putting pressure on and coming forward. Another one of Zawada's defensive shortcomings, he moves his head when he's on the outside, but when he comes forward, his defense is poor. He doesn't shift his head. He's incredibly reckless. He doesn't even return his hands to the chin. He gets countered very easily. And the step back right hook, I love that shot for Morono. That's going to be there when Zawada tries to get back to center cage from behind the black line. Morono loves throwing that strike, and he does get his head off to the left when throwing it to avoid that straight power hand of his opponent as they're coming forward. As for the grappling, quickly touch on it, neither of these guys consistently grapple, but I think we're going to see it here. I think it's just the nature of the close quarters combat that I predict with them crashing into range. I think they'll fall into the clinch at some stage. When there, David probably has a strength advantage, but Morono very good at hitting trips. He did it against Cowboy, and Morono's ground game, it's better than Zawada's. David did submit Abubakar Nurmagomedov with a triangle choke, which is a decent credential, but Morono's legit on the ground. He's got seriously good BJJ. And as for a submission, I am entertained by the price tag here on verdict for Morono, but I'm not going to take it. It feels a little silly for the fact that I think these guys are largely just going to strike and just going to want to strike. So I'm taking an Alex Morono decision at 1.91 times, which is a gross price in all honesty, but I think he's going to win cage control, damage, striking numbers, and then perhaps even have some grappling advantages and submission attempts when they hit the mat, if they do, and take this one relatively clearly, 2-1, maybe even all 3. Co-main event, Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Spivak. Aspinall 1.18 times on verdict and $1.31. Sergey Spivak 6.64 times and $3.26. I'll start with Sergey, the polar bear. I haven't given him credit before, really, but I'll admit my mistakes. He's a decent fighter and he is super young. He's only 26. He's actually younger than Aspinall, but with more overall experience and more UFC fights as well. As for his style, primarily a grappler. His striking is very rudimentary. He has a decent jab and then will load up the overhand right, but he doesn't kick, he doesn't target the legs. He's very quite basic. But in the grappling, his takedowns are solid and he's very dominant from top position. He's very aggressive with ground and pound, and then follows that up with submission attempts as well. Tom Aspinall, he's a much better striker than Spivak. Obviously, he has fantastic boxing, incredible footwork for such a big guy, and then good defense and range management as well. He is going to have his way on the feet with Sergey. He just moves better. He's way faster. He utilizes the kicks as well. He feints and works his way into range and into his combinations. His striking is just so much more advanced than Sergey's. And then on top of that, even though Spivak's a grappler, I don't think that he necessarily has an advantage down there, because Aspinall is a very strong wrestler and also has a black belt in BJJ. He submitted Andrei Arlovsky in his last fight, which is ridiculous. A ridiculous call that the Tadpole made, by the way, which you can fact check from way back on episode 28, if you please. Thank you for the extra views. But yeah, Aspinall's massive. Spivak's not going to be able to bully him around in the clinch or from top position as he has done against some of his previous opponents. I think he may even struggle to even secure a clinch against Tom, who just moves so much better. And then on the flip side, Aspinall could get his own takedowns. He's a big, powerful guy. He can shoot, blast double legs across the cage. He's good throws from body lock positions. But yeah, maybe that is less likely, because Spivak did show pretty decent defensive ability in the wrestling and the stand-up game against Alexei Oleinik last time out. But enough said. Tom Aspinall, round 1 knockout, 1.69 times. It's a very short price, but it's very likely. And that's what I'm riding with. 8 knockouts from 10 wins for Aspinall, all in the first round. Spivak's been slept once, which was also in the first round, to Walt Harris in his UFC debut. Yeah, that's that. Main event, Derek Brunson versus Darren Till. Derek Brunson, 4.08 times on verdict and $2.33 at the bookies. Darren Till, 1.32 times on verdict and $1.56. When I imagine this fight and I picture these two, I imagine that Darren Till would be the bigger guy, the rangier guy, but he isn't. He's shorter by an inch, 3 inches less in reach, which surprised me a lot. Anyway, Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson's got some heavy hands. He does kick the legs as well, but he is a grappler and he has to grapple in this fight because he is so much slower than Darren Till. His footwork's okay and his reaction time is pretty good. He does kind of skirt around on the outside and shuffle back when his opponent advances. But man, it looks like his arms weigh a ton sometimes. He's very laborious with his boxing and he is not a technical striker whatsoever. Darren Till, he should be able to light him up at range in this fight. He is lightning quick. He throws nice straight strikes down the pipe and then has a way more advanced kicking game. As for the stances, southpaw v southpaw, it makes for an interesting dynamic on the feet. For Darren Till, that left high kick, it won't be there so much, but the outside low kick will be. And to be honest, Darren prefers to go with his hands anyway. And he's a pressure fighter. His volume, it's not crazy. He's very patient and doesn't pour on the volume, but I expect he's going to be pouring on the pressure and pressing Brunson back in this matchup from bell to bell. And once there, Derek's not going to have the setups on his wrestling entries. He's going to be shooting off the back foot where Darren's going to have an eternity to kind of scoot the hips back and defend. And Till's takedown defense is solid regardless. It's at 82%. But takedown attempts like that are really low percentage. Brunson, he managed to nail those against Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland has no defensive wrestling and the IQ in the cage of an ant. Kevin was the one walking into clinch scenarios a lot in that fight and he got ragdolled as a result. Till will not make those same mistakes because he is that patient fighter on the edge of range. He'll chase the head with his left straight and then mix the angles with the left uppercut too. That's going to be money when Derek is trying to bob and weave against the cage with his subpar head movement. I'm probably not giving Brunson enough credit. He is a good fighter and his wrestling is excellent. He may get Till down at some stages, but For how I see this one playing out stylistically, with Derek having to absorb a lot of pressure, I just don't see him being able to implement that game plan consistently. I think he's going to feel the power of Darren, kind of be forced to back up and, shoot a couple of unsuccessful takedowns, roll his head around trying to find an angle out off the back of the cage and just get sparked. Get sparked early. First round knockout for Darren Till, 2.06 times. Brunson's been slept 5 times in his career, 4 of those in the first round. And Till's a sniper. He's going to hit the mark when he lets it go. I'm seeing an uppercut or step-in elbow, something like that, something beautiful, and end the night early. Let's wrap this shit up with the bets. We've got 3 single plays. The first of 3, Khalil Roundtree formula play at the money line, $2.30 on Bet365, 23% perceived edge at his current price point. It's self-explanatory, no need to go any further. My next 2 single plays are interesting prop bets over on Ladbrokes. They've released markets that let you bet on how many strikes, how many takedowns you think fighters may land. You can bet on which round you think is going to have more strikes or the most takedowns landed in for each fighter or combined. There's a few very interesting kind of prices and props out over there. My first of which on this event is Modestus Bukauskas to land 1 or more takedowns at $2.45. It's a weird one. I just like the price, Khalil has no ground game really and only 50% takedown defense. I think Modestus, he is better there. Like I mentioned at the end of my breakdown for that fight, it'd be a good strategy for him to implement. I'm obviously still on Khalil, but we could collect both bets here. And, if Khalil hurts Bukauskas, Modestus may even land a desperation takedown. So I think he is going to grapple at some point in this fight. And for him to land just the 1 takedown at $2.45, I think it's a great price. My next single play, I've got Alex Morono to land 60 or more significant strikes at $2.05. If this fight goes a distance as I have predicted, Morono, as per his averages, should land about 75 strikes. If you look into his history, 3 of his last 4 fights that have gone the distance, he's covered this, including a massive 176 significant strike performance over Reese McKee. Like I said in the breakdown, David Zawada's striking defense isn't great. He absorbs over 4 strikes a minute. I don't think Morono's going to have any trouble whatsoever finding the mark, and I like the bet. As for the multi, it's got 4 legs. We'll go with it. The first leg, Khalil Roundtree by knockout. Alex Morono to land 60 plus significant strikes. Aspinall at the money line. And then Darren Till by knockout at $25.46 on Ladbrokes. A couple of those already self-explanatory. They're all self-explanatory really. I like them all a lot. The Roundtree knockout leg is my most weary, but I like the matchup for him, and I hope we see that Muay Thai excellence that we know he has. And yeah, I hope I haven't got all my eggs in the Khalil basket as it may seem, but hoping that we have a profitable weekend on an early card this week to suit those Brits tuning in for all their Liverpudlians on this event. Wow, I just fucking said Liverpudlians. That'll just about do it then, I reckon. See you on the next one, catch up.